All right, hey there, folks. Since book tour and conventions have been put on hold for a bit, I figured I'd bring book tour to you. So welcome to Russ's Rockin Rollercoaster, intriguing interviews with creative minds. I can't believe we're here, but tonight is my last podcast of 2020. So tonight, let me welcome my very good friend and fellow Crazy 8 Press inmate, AARON Rosenberg. AARON is the author of the best-selling DuckBob Sci-Fi comedy series, the Rockin Chronicles epic fantasy series, the Dread Remora space opera series, and with David Niall Wilson, the OCLT occult thriller series. AARON has written children's books, including the award-winning Band Slam, the junior novel, and the #1 best-selling 42, the Jackie Robinson story. He has also written educational books and role-playing games, and his tie-in work includes novels for Star Trek, Warhammer, World of Warcraft, Stargate Atlantis, and Eureka. Welcome, AARON.
Thanks. Yeah, appreciate it.
All
I'm
right.
going to hire you to do all my introductions from now on. It was great.
Perfect. All right. Okay, so just a heads up to the folks at home. Feel free to send me notes or questions or comments you have for AARON in the chat box during the show, and we'll get to a few at the end. Okay, so let's jump in as we always do. AARON, so where were you born and where'd you grow up?
I was born in New Jersey, so, not too far from where I am now in New York.
Where?
I kind of grew up all over the place. So
Where in New Jersey? Where in New Jersey were you born?
New Brunswick.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, I only lived in New Jersey for a little while. Then I wound up in Berkeley, California. Then I wound up in Providence, Rhode Island, and then I wound up in New Orleans. I lived in New Orleans till I was in high school.
Wait, hold on.
I wound up in Kansas.
Go back for a second.
Yeah.
So I knew that you spent a lot of your time in New Orleans, but go back to the California. I didn't know you were in California. When was that? For how long?
Yeah, that was for about a year and a half. My dad was going to grad school out at Berkeley.
Oh, do you have, you're probably too young. You don't have any memories of being out there?
The only memory I have of California is we lived in a little one-story house, and literally next to us was a playground. So I remember the playground.
You do remember? Okay. Do you have any?
I do remember that.
Is it just sort of like this amorphous idea of a playground, or was there something specific about the playground you remember?
I just remember, it was a really cute little playground, not very big at all, but it had, like the merry-go-round and those little horses on the springs that you sit on and rock on, and some swings. And obviously being right next to our house, we were there all the time. My older sister and I, we were there all the time.
Right. So and you're one of 4 kids?
4 kids. Yep. I'm the second one.
Right. And it's you and you have 3 sisters, correct?
Yep, exactly.
Okay. Right. Okay. So, and the older sister, so what's the age difference between you guys?
2 years.
So she's 2 years older than you, and then your 2 younger sisters, what's the difference?
Then it's 8 years and then 5 more years.
Oh wow! Oh wow! So there was a gap in there for.
Yep.
Wow,
yeah,
okay.
we got a 15-year spread. I'm sorry.
Your parents were in diapers for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, but the good news for them is that my older sister and I were old enough to babysit by the time my younger sister came along. So.
All right. So you went to California, then you went to Rhode Island. I didn't know that. Was that just again like a stopover, or did you spend some time there?
I was in Rhode Island for 3 years. My dad was in private practice out there.
Do you have any memory? Where in Rhode Island? Do you remember?
Providence.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I do remember. I do have memories of Rhode Island. Rhode Island was, because I was 6 by the time we left Rhode Island, so I was already in first grade. We actually left when I was partway through first grade. And I remember the school I went to. I remember the hill we lived on, because we lived fairly high up on a hill, and we used to go sledding straight down the hill, which would have been great, except there was a street right across the bottom of it. So, go sledding all the way down it, straight across the street. That was exciting. I definitely remember being there in the winters, making like snow angels in the backyard, things like that. So.
Okay. And then you guys moved to, was it New Orleans or Kansas City? Which one was first?
New Orleans. Yeah. Yep. I lived in New Orleans from 6 to 16. So
6 to 16. Okay. So really your formative years were.
Yeah.
Huh. What was that like?
It was great. New Orleans is a great city. I really like it down there. Obviously I've been back. My dad's actually back down there. So, I've been back to visit and things like that. Food's amazing. Culture's amazing. It was a great time down there.
And then, so you were there, and then you were in, and this was, how much has it changed? I believe it or not, I've actually never been to New Orleans. It's one of the, I know it's.
Oh yeah, you need to go.
I know. It's also, I can't eat spicy food because my stomach can't take it. And I'm not a big fan of kind of that brassy kind of music. It's just not
Okay.
my thing. So if you're not there for the music and you're not for the food, but there's got to be so much other culture and history there, right?
There is. I mean, it's an amazing city. It's a beautiful city. You know, it has the French influence. You know, it's kind of unique in the United States. And the food, you know, obviously a lot of it is spicy, but it's not just spice. So, you know, there's a lot of really good foods down there that probably wouldn't set you off at all. You know, and jazz is not my favorite thing necessarily either, but you know, you can't walk around the city without hearing it and appreciating it. It's just, it's
Right.
everywhere.
So I have to ask. So one of my first memories, and it's probably my most distinct memory of New Orleans, although of course, like so many things, you know, we get it from TV, was watching what was the Roger Moore James Bond movie, his first one.
Live and Let Die.
Live and Let Die. So that's in my mind, like that's New Orleans. I mean, so did you have any? You know, obviously there's a big, like the voodoo culture. Was that something that like was really is that more myth, or is that really kind of part of the culture down there?
Oh no, it's very much part of the culture down there. Yeah, it's you know, it's not. I mean, it's not something that you run across like every single day or something like that. But you definitely hear about it. Definitely, if you go down to the quarter, especially, you'll run across lots of little shops and things like that with it. Yeah, you really can't avoid hearing about it when you grow up.
So did you have it? No, did you like go inside the tents and have, sit with a woman with a giant snake wrapped around her shoulder?
I never have actually.
No, really?
Nope.
You were there for 10 years and you never had a tarot card reading?
No, I mean, I left when I was 16. So, you know.
I guess.
Yeah.
But even still, in all the times you went back, you've never done it once.
No, I actually haven't.
Okay, well, we're gonna have, you know what? We'll have to go down there, and we'll have to go together.
All right, sounds good.
All right, that's it. Tarot reading. We're going. Okay, so you're in New Orleans, and then you went to Kansas City.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
And you were there pretty much, and for how long?
Well, I graduated high school in Kansas City, or in Overland Park, which is a suburb of Kansas City, and then I went to KU, University of Kansas. So, which is in Lawrence, which is about 45 minutes away from Kansas City. So
Okay.
I went to undergrad there, and then I got my master's there, and then I did my PhD coursework there as well. So,
In what?
English literature.
Okay. So obviously, so like me, you're a word guy. So growing up, what was your first introduction to sci-fi and fantasy? Is just a huge part of your life. How did that get started for you?
So, what I remember is when I lived in New Orleans, there is a public library there, and I'm trying to remember because the building is still there, and I think it's still a public library, but I don't remember for certain. But it was in this beautiful old mansion, just absolutely breathtaking place, right on St. Charles Avenue, which is one of the major streets in New Orleans, and it had been donated to be used as a public library. So it's this beautiful, beautiful building. We used to go there all the time, and there was this nook. I don't really know how else to describe it. And of course, this is from my child's perspective, but it was a nook with like these beautiful French doors, and it was floor to ceiling bookcases in that little nook, and that was within the children's section, but that was all science fiction and fantasy. And I remember finding that place. I mean, I had to be like 7, 8 years old, and that's where I found things like A Wrinkle in Time. It's where I found Witch World. It's where I found Wizard of Earthsea. And those three are really like my first clear memories of reading science fiction and fantasy and going, wow, like this is amazing. Because you get beyond the little kids books, where all kinds of, I mean, a lot of little kids books, I feel like especially our generation, were sort of magic realism in a way, right? I mean, magical things would happen, but it wasn't necessarily fantasy. It was just magical things were occurring, right? No one describes where the wild things are as fantasy necessarily, but obviously it is essentially.
Sure.
But these three were very much fantasy and science fiction, and there was no mistaking that was a genre. And yeah, reading those sort of opened my eyes to it.
So that must have been really something because, as a kid, I didn't read sci-fi or fantasy, not really. I was I was a TV and movie kid. I got everything. I like so many of us. I was a Spielberg kid, and that during that time, and that was my introduction. I didn't read that stuff as a kid. So what is that like? Being 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, and sort of sort of being entrenched in these in these wonderful adventures that sort of take your mind in places that that don't exist in our normal world.
It was amazing. I mean, my family is very much, we're very book oriented. We always have been. My mother taught school, and so, we learned to read and all loved books and all spent a lot of time in books and around books, but encountering those, it really does sort of open your eyes to the possibilities of the stories. I mean, I've always loved telling stories, and reading those, it's like, wow, you can tell stories that aren't just, grounded in the real world. They can actually be wherever you want, whatever you want. They can be anything, and that's, and then other people can read them. And that, of course, is, the really exciting thing is not just, that you can tell them, but that people want to read them.
So so that's when you started. Was there a point in your youth and anywhere even into your teen years where there was sort of, what was your sci-fi fantasy jam? Like, what was the stuff that got you most excited?
I mean, in terms of like specific authors, or just in terms of
whether they were authors, whether they were books, movies, anything? What was the stuff that was really the most thrilling for you?
I mean, obviously I read Lord of the Rings early on, and loved it. I mean, such an intricate world, so detailed, so involved. And of course, I'm the right age to have been around when Dungeons and Dragons really got started, and so, I mean, I started playing that with friends. Let's see, we started playing it in 5th or 6th grade, I think, was when we first were introduced to it. That's when the original box set came out. And just the notion that you could create your own characters and tell your own stories with your friends, and that sort of collaborative effort that's involved in that, not just your story, not just his story, but all of your stories together, that was really amazing. And the thing about role-playing games especially is that there's a structure to it and a system to it. And that was something I picked up on, and then obviously years later writing my own, you learn that there has to be underpinnings, there has to be a real logic and system to all the fireballs and dragons and flying carpets and things that are occurring, because if there isn't, then it can still be pretty, it can still be beautiful, but there isn't that inherent logic to it, and you can sort of see that in a story. So that became very important to me.
That was actually going to be my next question. So knowing you as I do, including the gaming group that we're in together, you have a broad and deep knowledge, not just of sci-fi, but fantasy, history, and mythology. So is that what the appeal is for you? That there's a system, so while the elements might be fantastical, but that there's a system and a structure behind it. Is that the appeal to you, or?
I think it's the marriage of the two. I mean, obviously, part of my background is being academic, because I have a master's in English. So, I mean, I've spent a lot of time like analyzing books and, not just writing them, but sort of critiquing them and taking them apart and things like that, and so, and teaching them, teaching people how to write and how to read, and so the notion that there is a structure is important to me, but so is the fantastical. I mean, I love the fantastical. I love that you can go anywhere your imagination can take you, but the fact that you can not just leap, but you can actually sort of build a lattice work that carries your leap forward, and that you can then show other people how to leap. And that's the real thing. Role-playing games especially are about creating a world so other people can tell their stories. And I love that. I love that if you create something and do a good enough job of it, other people can create their stories and still be in the same world, in the same framework, using the same rules that you are. That's kind of amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair, right? I mean, I guess, when we write ourselves, especially being sci-fi and fantasy authors, we can kind of do whatever we want as long as we define the rules of our world and we're consistent within our own rules.
Yeah.
Right. Then anything can go. All right. So let me ask you, so when you were in those formative years, you were growing up, you were starting to find this world, were you sort of I mean, obviously your family sounds like they were supportive, but were you all in your own sort of little geek fandom growing up, or did you have a community back then? You know, friends were kind of into the same things that you were.
Um, I mean, I've always had some creative friends. I mean, when you're kids, you come up with stories, you make up games, you do all kinds of things like that. Um, my best friend growing up, Sam, used to create little computers, not real computers. He would basically he's an artist, and he would draw little computers, like these little laminated things which had like all the little gadgets and gears, and they looked like something that James Bond would carry. They'd have little descriptors in them like lie detector and truth meters and Geiger counter and all kinds of things in them. So yeah, I mean, I guess you sort of surround yourself with people like that. I mean, once I found gaming, I found gaming because two of my friends in elementary, were interested in it, and the three of us started gaming together. So yeah, I mean, it's like attracts like, right? I mean, you get drawn to people who have similar imaginations,
Right.
or at least appreciate imaginations.
Yeah, it's funny because as a kid, I wasn't into D&D. I feel like I missed out on that stuff, but I was actually I was a computer baseball nerd. And
Okay.
that's what me and my friends did. So we knew every baseball stat on planet Earth and created teams and whatnot. But just it was my version of D&D
Right.
in its
Yeah.
own in its own way. So all right, so this is obviously the background. You had the sci-fi and fantasy and the gaming and the structure of it. So obviously it sparked a real passion. So let's transition. So tell me when you first got serious about writing.
Professionally or otherwise.
Well, when did you first start to get the bug?
So, I used to do, I used to go to the kids' classes occasionally and give talks about being a writer. And I always brought my favorite prop, which happens to be right here, which is, this is a creative writing award that I won in third grade. And you probably can't read the year from there, but it's 1977.
Okay, it's not really
I
coming.
I won this. So my school went from K through 4, that school. And every year they gave awards for various things. And one of the awards they gave was a writing award per grade. And then there was the creative writing award for the school. So the year I was in third grade, I won this, which beat out the fourth grader. So, and that was the first time that it really occurred to me, going up and getting this award for the entire school, that I realized that you write for other people, and that really the best thing that can happen as a writer is when somebody tells you how much they love your story. And because up to that point I wrote for me, because I loved writing and I loved making up stories, and like my parents would read them, and my friends might read them, but those are people who are already sort of biased in your favor. But these were people I didn't really know in my school, who, because our stories were posted on the walls and stuff, who told me how much they loved the story. And that was when I realized that was something I could really aspire to.
All right, so you've zigged and zagged over the years, and we kind of went through your bio, and you've written a whole bunch of stuff. So you've written countless books, short stories, novellas, but DuckBob Spinowtiz is the character you're probably most closely associated with.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, tell us about DuckBob, how you came up with him, and to you, what's he all about? Because after all, in a way, DuckBob is kind of how you and I met.
Yeah, I know, right? It's all DuckBob's fault.
Yes.
So, I used to, years and years back, I was working at Band Books, reading submissions. And it was just in the back room, it was just me and this other guy, my friend Fred. And, so we would chat in between things and stuff like that. And, we were both sci-fi geeks, and we would both just be a little silly sometimes in the back room. And one time, and I don't remember how it came up, but somehow I came up with this line that was DuckBob surfs the ion waves. And there was a subline to it too, and it was something along the lines of, a wacky avian surfer sails the cosmic drift or something like that. And that was it. It was just a line, and I just set it aside. I wrote it down somewhere because I had notebooks full of these things. Wrote it down, set it aside. So years later, I was talking to a friend of mine, and I had just finished writing a World of Warcraft novel, which is, epic. I mean, it's huge. I mean, this ridiculous cast of characters. It's battles the human race versus the whole race and everything else. I mean, it's just massive scale, and I was saying to her, that I didn't have anything scheduled to write next, which was kind of unusual. And I didn't know what to do. I wasn't sure what to do with myself. And it was towards the end of October. And I said, I'd heard of this thing, NaNoWriMo. And I said, I'm kind of thinking of giving it a shot, just for the hell of it. And she said, well, you know what? I dare you to not only do NaNoWriMo, but to do something completely different, to do something you've never done before. Write something totally different from anything you've done. And I thought, okay, that sounds like fun. Why not? I've got some time. And so I dug through my notes and I came across that line. And I was like, you know what? I should do something with this. And I had no plan. I had nothing for it. And I'm a serious plotter, but I had nothing for it. And I just sat down and started writing. And DuckBob just sort of came to life. The title came into my head at some point in the first handful of chapters, No Small Bills. And DuckBob just kind of ran from there, and he's the kind of character who really does run. And you just kind of let him have his head. And
well, don't breeze past that part. For those who don't know, who is describe DuckBob? For those who don't know who he is.
Yeah, so I mean, DuckBob is he's basically your average everyday schmo, right? He's just this normal guy. He goes to work at this office, fairly nameless, fairly boring job, works in a cubicle, punches the clock, leaves every day, goes out for a beer with his friends, things like that, except that he got the head of a duck. At some point in the past, and I think within this past year, I actually wrote for the first time ever, wrote his origin story. But at some point in the past, he basically got abducted by aliens and they modified him. And so when they sent him back, he's covered in feathers. He has like huge sort of webbed feet, and he has the head of a duck. I mean, but human sized. I mean, it's not, not like a little tiny head. He's got like a big head. It's a mallard. And he just kind of went back to work is the thing. Like, it's like, he's like, I have the head of a duck. So what? It's, I mean, I kind of had, Howard the Duck in the back of my head, as this, if you've ever seen Howard the Duck, I mean, he's this character who started out in comic books and they did a movie of him at one point. He's shown up in the Marvel movies since, but he smokes a cigar and he has a filthy mouth and drinks too much and all this other stuff, plays cards badly and things like that. Right. So DuckBob was just this guy. He's just this regular guy who just happened to be like that. And he's just so much fun to write because he has no filter.
But beyond that, so that's kind of like the base of it. But what's the crux of the kind of adventures that he gets into?
So what happens in his first book, No Small Bills, which is that one that I started with,
and Bills being the play on Bill.
Bills being the play on Bills, exactly. The subtitle is Can Foul Play Save the Universe?
Not foul, right?
Yep, exactly. I do like my puns. Basically at the start of the novel, he gets grabbed up by the Men in Black, who tell him that because of his alteration, he has some special connection to sort of cosmic forces, and they need him to essentially travel to the center of the galaxy to save the universe from invasion. And DuckBob's just kind of like, okay, and the thing about DuckBob is that one of the reasons he's so much fun to write is he is a good guy. Like, at his heart, he really is a good guy. Like, and it comes out more and more throughout the books that, he's super loyal to his friends. He really is the kind of person who has your back. And he doesn't always think very highly of himself. I mean, he's obviously been the butt of so many duck jokes ever since that happened. He changed his name in a way to try to get out ahead of them, because people would just call him, hey, Duckface and things like that. And so he finally just said, you know what, I'm just gonna own it, and that's why he changed the name. But, he can be a little, not so much down on himself, but, he sort of makes jokes at his own expense so other people don't, in a way. And he knows he's not the brightest bulb necessarily. He's not a rocket scientist, but he's not stupid. And he is a good person. It's his biggest problem is he never knows when to shut his mouth. Now he has a huge mouth, so it's even harder.
See, to me, I always find that he's got a little bit of Daffy Duck in him. He's a little hyper, a little wacky.
He is a little hyper. He's a little wacky, definitely. He's learned because life threw him this huge curveball. So he's kind of learned to just take anything and everything in stride. And he never knows when to stop talking, and he never knows how to filter what he's saying. So whatever comes into his head, comes out of his mouth, basically. But the good news is you always know where you stand with him.
Yeah.
Right. He would never stab somebody in the back. He might, try to trip you up right in front of you. And then he's like, yeah, I did that because you were being a jerk or whatever. But you're never not going to know where you are with him. Yeah. And I like that. I like people like that, and I like writing something like that.
Yeah, and he's got loyal friends and a smoking hot girlfriend while he's trying to save the galaxy.
He does. He has these great friends. Wound up being this cosmic road trip, and just picked up these weird characters along the way. And I just had so much fun writing that book. I mean, I'd never written a book like that before. I really hadn't done humor before. I certainly had never done a book that I was pantsing my entire way through. Right. Just who knew what was coming next? I didn't. I'd just start writing a chapter and out it would come.
And all in is what? There's 4 novels and about a half dozen short stories?
Yeah, 4 novels. And yeah, I think that's about right. About a half dozen short stories. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So one last question before we get into some other stuff. So you write over the year, you have written and continue to write for various publishers, as well as for Crazy 8 Press, which you and I have been a part of for the better part of a decade. With the state of affairs in the publishing world these days, what's your experience writing for these publishers of various sizes and reach?
I mean, I've been on a lot of panels about the different levels of publishing and things like that. And, I'm what's called a hybrid author, which means that I write for not just self-publishing or small press, but also big press. And what I always tell people is I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. I don't want to close myself off from a possibility. And I'm really happy that way, because I think that it's given me a lot more longevity and a lot more opportunity than I would have had otherwise. Because I write so many different kinds of things, and because I will not discount any level of publishing. If a big publisher wants to hire me to write something, or I send something to a big publisher and they want to publish it, that's great. But if a small publisher is interested in something, that's great. And if I decide to put it out myself through Crazy 8 Press, that's great. There are different advantages to each level, and I like having things out at all the different levels, because I don't want, there are people out there who will only consider a book if it's only from a big publisher. And there are people out there who will probably only consider a book if it's not from a big publisher. And I don't want to lose any potential reader who might enjoy my stories. So I want to put them out in as many ways as possible to give everybody the chance to find them.
All right. So quick interlude for folks who came in a little late. If you have any questions or comments for Aaron, send them in the chat box, and we'll get to a few at the end of the show. Okay. So you've got some new books. You've got some books out. What do you got for us? I'm going to do a little shared screen here. Okay. So give me a minute, make sure I do it right, and then and I'll pull it up. Let's see. Hang on one second. I'm going to do a little share screen action, and we're going to do this. And I'm going to do this. Oops, sorry. All right, here we go. Sorry, I'm going to move things around a little bit. There we go. Okay, can you see? Are you seeing this?
Nope.
No. Nope. Yeah. Okay, hang on. Let me. I had a little issue with this last time. How about now?
Nope.
No. All right. Not clicking on the right thing. All right, hang on one second. Give me a minute. Why am I having a problem with this? Here we go. Sorry, folks. Just a little technical nonsense here.
I'm gonna start doing the Jeopardy theme.
Yeah. Right. Hold on. Let's try this again. I'm gonna. Oh, it's probably because I didn't do that.
I'm definitely seeing your screen.
There we go. All right. How about now?
Yep. There we go.
Okay. So here are your. So you've got a bunch of duck. So here are your DuckBobs. We got what? Go ahead. Walk us through real quick.
Right. So No Small Bills, which is obviously the first one, which is DuckBob's Cosmic Road Trip. The second one, Too Small for Tall, is really centered on his best friend, who's a man in black that he's nicknamed Tall. The third book, Three Small Coinkydinks, really focuses on the third member of their little quartet, which is he's an alien techie named Ned, whose home planet is an awful lot like Brooklyn, and it turns out there's actually a real reason for that. And then the fourth and final book, Not for Small Minds, centers on Mary, who's the only female in the group and DuckBob's girlfriend. She, like him, is a human who was altered by the aliens, but she's been altered in different ways, mainly cerebrally. And it's really about, it's sort of about her past and coming to terms with it, while at the same time, once again, saving the universe.
All right. Okay. So what else we got? So what do we got here?
So these are the Occult series, which I write with David Neil Wilson. These are my three. So David and I came up with this idea to do this sort of shared series. Occult stands for Orphic Crisis Logistical Task Force. Think X-Files meets Mission Impossible. It's basically a loose group of people who are called in whenever local authorities can't handle something because it's just outside the norm. It could be supernatural, it could be super science, it could be, ghosts, aliens, elves, it could be anything. And it's fun because it gives us a chance to really play with all kinds of different things. So Brought to Light was my novella, which sort of introduced the series and introduced R.C. Hayes, who becomes the leader of the team. Incursion is a thriller that takes place in the Pacific Northwest and deals with like elemental spirits. And Digging Deep takes place deep in the New York subway system and deals with creatures sort of digging their way up from below.
All right. Spooky. All right. And last but not least.
So Relic Chronicles is my anime-esque epic fantasy series. I like to describe it as Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon meets Game of Thrones. It's basically set in a world where there used to be a lot of magic, and now all the magic has gone except for what's basically ancestor worship in the form of ritualized cannibalism. People literally ingest the bones of their ancestors, and by doing so, they absorb their memories and their skills. And so as a result, this kingdom that they're in has become very stagnant because people feel like, why should I bother to spend 20, 30 years becoming a master potter when my grandfather was a master potter and all I have to do is basically swallow a pinch of bone and I have all of his skills. So and into this come a handful of characters, including a pair of brothers trying to make their way in the world. And they wind up sort of reshaping the kingdom and giving it some new life.
All right. So you've got 3 books out so far. You've got another one. Wait, I thought there was 4.
There are 5 books in this series. The 4th one is written and is off to my publisher. This should be out in March, I believe.
Gotcha. Okay. Very good. Okay. Great. So as we always do, we're at that time in the show where we are going to, of course,
spin the wheel.
Spin the wheel. All right. You've been at this a couple of times. So I've come up with a couple of new elements just for you. We'll see what happens.
Oh, good.
Okay. On the wheel are 7 categories. Wherever it lands is what you get. And the categories are Fear of Flying, Hello Earthlings, Beam Me Up Scotty, Never Tell Me the Odds, Quantum Leap, TIE Fighter, and DuckBob.
Okay.
All right. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. Let's see.
I should really be doing the Jeopardy theme.
You got, all right, beam me up, Scott. All right,
Okay.
Here we go. So what do we got? All right, we're all obviously these days in dire need of a vacation. Scotty is manning the transporter and can send you anywhere in the cosmos you want to go. What's your destination?
Now, when he sends me anywhere in the cosmos, does he send me equipped with like a spacesuit or, any kind of environment or anything like that? Or
Anywhere you want to go, all expenses paid, everything comp, everything taken care
of. Okay. You know what I think would be cool? I've never been on a cruise. Jen and I have talked about this before.
Oh, they're so good.
And if you remember in Fifth Element, the cruise that he wins tickets to, right? That cruise that's on that planet, that beautiful water planet.
Yeah.
I think I would go there
right.
because you get the best of both going on a cruise and going to another planet at the same time.
All right. Fifth Element water planet. I love it. Okay. So you and I are both. So right now we're going to go to our advice column. You and I are both in the writing business. I've asked you this before. So this time I'm going to narrow the question to a specific thread.
Okay.
When it comes to working with editors, especially if you don't always see eye to eye with them. What's
Right.
the best advice you can pass along to other writers about how to deal with them?
Okay. Um, I mean, the first and foremost, always be professional, right? I mean, always, be reasonable. Always listen to your editor. That doesn't mean you always have to do everything they say, but always listen to them because they're seeing things from a different perspective than you are. Always communicate with them. Like that's really super important, especially when you're working on, things like tie-in properties, things that are contracted. If there's any kind of hiccup, any kind of question, tell them right away. And the what I always say about editors is that there's sort of three categories that I feel editing notes fall into. There's the category that's dope, which is the one where you read their note and you go, oh yeah, obviously, why did I not think of that? Of course, that makes so much sense, right? And you do that and you're super happy about it. There are the notes where you kind of go, yeah, I mean, okay, I guess, that's fine, that's fair. You don't necessarily agree, but you don't disagree. It doesn't take away anything from what you're doing. So you make those changes because it makes your editor happy and because they're seeing things from a different perspective and a lot of experience. And then there's the third category, which is the one where you go, that's really not where I'm going with this. That I think there's a miscommunication. You're not getting what I wanted to do with this. And with a good editor, that leads to a conversation. That leads to you talking to the editor and saying, look, I don't agree with this comment. Here's where I was going. And they say, okay, here's what I got out of this. And the two of you together figure it out. And it may be that they're right and that you were not going where you thought you were. Or it may be that they can help you see why it didn't go where you thought it was going, and they can help you get it there. Once they know what you really want to do with it. But with a good editor, that is a conversation, because the editor's goal is to make your writing better, not to make it their writing, but to make your writing the best it can be. And I think as long as you know that and remember that, you're approaching it from a good place, because it really is supposed to be a collaboration between you and your editor.
Fair enough. All right, good advice. So we have a few minutes before we wrap up. So if we got any questions or comments from the fans at home, we'll take a few. Otherwise, we'll get to the end here. We got anything? Let's see, what do we got? Well, apparently, according to your wife, you are the king of dad jokes.
She should know, right?
One would think. Okay, so Aaron, here's a question. Can you talk about? Oh yes, the question that came up was what we're going to talk about now. We talked about what books are coming.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, where can folks get them, and then what's next for you?
So the Rockin Chronicles you can find on Falstaff Books, which I believe is falstaffbooks.com. I can't actually, it's terrible that I don't know that off the top of my head, but I believe that's right. Let me see. My Crazy 8 books, of course, like the DuckBob novels, you can find, yep, I was correct, falstaffbooks.com. My Crazy 8 books you can find at crazy8press.com. And the occult novels you can find through crossroadpress.com. All of them are available through Amazon, of course. You can get all of them there. But if you want to buy them directly from a publisher, you can go directly to those.
All right. So we got a couple more questions. So one, will you be writing another DuckBob book?
No, I won't. I felt like DuckBob. I told his story, and I really, not for small minds, even though it's Mary's book, really also wraps up DuckBob's story that started in No Small Bills. I'm still going to do short stories with him because he's just so much fun to write. And at some point when I have enough, I'll probably collect all the short stories, because they're all over the place, into a collection. But I don't think I'm going to do another novel of him.
Okay. Would you ever collaborate with another author? Which is funny, since you and I just collaborated on a story that we just did, in fact.
Yeah, no, I have. And I like collaboration. I mean, collaboration is really, really tricky. You have to be working with somebody who you trust and who you get along with. And you have to be able to set aside egos and things. And you have to be able to build on each other's strengths. But if you can do those things, it can be a lot of fun, because you can wind up taking the story places you yourself would not have thought of on your own.
Yeah, in fact, Aaron and I just collaborated in Pangea 3. We wrote one of the short stories together. he wrote a part and I wrote a part, and hopefully it works out. Okay. Last but not, what do we got? We got one or two more. Can we get your books at Shore Leave? Well, I'm assuming once we're back there.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Yes, you can always get those at Shore Leave.
Right.
You know, I always go to, you know, once everything's back in order again, I always go to Farpoint. I always go to Shore Leave. I'm always in the author's library at Origins Game Fair, and I'm always in the Writer Symposium at Gen Con. So
Right.
those are the four I'm pretty much guaranteed to be at.
All right, we got one more question. I'm glad it came up because I meant to ask you before. To what extent did your background in New Orleans influence your writing, or does it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I don't know that it influenced it directly, other than just the fact that because I've moved around a lot, you know, I've met a lot of different people. You know, I've been a lot of different places, and, you know, I like to think that it's made me a little more open to different possibilities, different kinds of characters, you know, because certainly you know, you're going to meet people in any city, anywhere, you're going to meet people who you wouldn't meet necessarily elsewhere, you know, and everybody's got a story. New Orleans has so much color and so much life to it. There's so much story to that city, you know, and the city itself is a character, which I think is also important a lot of the time to give your setting a personality.
Absolutely. All right, that was great. So thank you, Aaron, for telling us what you got. As for me, hot off the press is Crackle and Fire, featuring my hard-boiled intergalactic private eye, Angela Hardwick, who was hired to find a missing intern with stolen corporate files, but soon finds herself tackling with dueling gangsters, angry protesters, and a madman from Earth with galactic ambitions of his own. It's available on Amazon and published by Crazy 8 Press. All right, thank you, Aaron, for a great show. And I want to thank everyone who's watching. I'm your host, Russ Colchamiro, and this is my last podcast of 2020, wrapping up season 2 of Russ's Rockin' Rollercoaster. After tonight, I will be taking a much needed break, but rest assured, I will be back in January with an awesome lineup of guests for season 3. And if I don't talk to you before the holidays, before then, happy holidays to everyone. My very best wishes for you, for your health and prosperity. And I look forward to our slow climb back to normalcy in 2021. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Russ. This was great.
All right. Take care, folks. Have a great year.
Bye, guys. Thanks for coming.
All right. Bye now.